Hello and welcome to the Modern Witches YouTube channel and podcast. We are so excited to have Maria Minnis with us today to talk about magic. I am your host, Casey Zabala. My pronouns are she, her, and I am excited to just be digging into the witchcraft with you all. So thank you, Maria, for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I am such a fan of this channel, and I'm just so glad to, have a little part in it.
Lovely. And thank you so much. I have to give a little context because Maria taught at our last Confluence. And you taught a class tarot for social justice, which I thought was absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you. Presenting was a thrill. The Confluence is amazing. It's just thank you thank you and your team for crafting it.
It's a pleasure, truly. So do you want to give folks a sense of like what you do in the world and who you are?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Maria Minnis. My pronouns are she, her. I live on Ohlone land, the so-called Bay Area, and I am a tarot reader, teacher, and writer. And yeah, I write about the tarot, I write about mysticism, and I also just write tiny little poems for fun.
Love it. And can you share your handle with folks so they can know how to find you on Instagram and all the things?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at tinyparsnip. It's all one word, and my website's mariaminnis.com.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm curious at how you found yourself in your lifetime being attracted to witchcraft and magic and tarot.
Yeah, I think I have always really been into it before I even knew like what witchcraft was. I was definitely a creepy kid. I was into a lot of like ghosts and like talking to the beyond and etc. My grandmother was psychic, and my father is as well, and so I didn't realize that until later in life. I think some of that was repressed through religion. So I feel like in embracing my own psychic nature and my own witchiness, I feel like I'm really, breaking ground in my lineage, and I am so grateful for it. Like, I have been doing tarot. I've been into tarot for about 20 years now, 21, I guess, this year. And my friend gave me a pack of cards, and I didn't know that they had meanings. So I created my own meanings, or like I used my intuition to, read for myself and for others. And eventually I got, up to speed on the collective meanings. And that whole journey just feels like a whole period in which I really came into my being as a witch. And for me, being a witch, for me just means like living life intentionally, using your will and desire and action to bring about change, in conjunction with the support of the universe.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think maybe this is true for a lot of people, but I definitely had that kind of connection with witchcraft through tarot. That was like a big gateway for me. And I love what you said about kind of like you made your own readings, because that part of the experience of like actually reading intuitively, I think can be the hardest thing.
Right.
Yeah,
definitely. I think tarot kind of, for me, forces it upon me. It forces such a strong word, but the most magical ingredient in any sort of divination session is the person who's in it, right? And so I feel like leading with my intuition has made it really quite easy to use it in tarot reading in everyday life, which I feel like is something that is very difficult for a lot of people to do, understandably, in this society that encourages seeking the things that you can ask yourself externally. And so part of my work really is to bring people back to their own intuition and to trust it and to really develop a relationship with it to the point where it becomes using their intuition in everyday, mundane life just becomes really just something they do, something they don't even really think about.
Yeah, that's such important work. We're all
Yeah,
just under this left brain spell, I feel like. Um,
right, right.
and so did you feel like you had like a natural relationship with your intuition growing up, or was it something that you sort of consciously thought about developing?
I feel like I had a natural relationship with my intuition, like from the jump. I really didn't begin like really focusing on intuition work until like maybe the mid 2010s. And I was like, okay, well, I have, these feelings, I see these visions, I hear things. But, that's just life. That's, everyone does that, And then I was listening to a podcast about intuition and I was like, oh, this is something I have to develop and work with. And then in my working with those materials and those pieces of information, I realized this is what I've been doing all along. And yeah, and just because it comes naturally to me doesn't mean that I'm not continually trying to, hone it and to really, make sure that I'm close with it because I can tell when, I'm not trusting my intuition, and the universe makes it so obvious for me, for better or worse. And so I feel really lucky to have that natural connection with my intuition and to really know that it's strong. And also, I think we are really lucky to be able to work on that relationship. It's not just a top down thing. It's not just something that, was given to me at birth, which is different from, what other people have. And, earlier I said, my grandmother was a psychic and, my dad, is a psychic as well. I honestly, actually, thinking back to what I said, I really do genuinely believe that everyone is psychic. It's just a matter of, but it's just a matter of like really, digging deep and really trusting yourself. And for me, the words, psychic and intuition, they kind of blend together for me. And I totally understand if other people keep those terms or thoughts, ideas separate. But for me, it's all about like intuition, psychic, whatever. It's all about like really tuning into this natural voice that we have and to really understand how that helps us relate to our environments in intentional ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it's interesting because I totally agree. I think we all have that capacity to be intuitive, psychic. Um, but I think it's special to also acknowledge this like ancestral connection you have with that. Um, Especially because I want to hear more about your specific ancestral connection, but I do think we are all intuitive and psychic because all of our ancestors used to really rely on that
Right, right.
method of knowing and like having wisdom and engaging with the world. So um, there is that baseline, but I'm curious about like your own connection with your ancestors, your lineage, and how that's affected your witchcraft.
Yeah, it has affected my witchcraft, both personally and publicly. Really, I used to get so, and actually, I'm lying. Sometimes I do still get really sad and upset over the fact that as a Black woman in America who is the descendants of the descendant of many enslaved people. I would get so sad about how so much of my family's history isn't documented. I don't know a lot of what their traditions are, or like I don't know a lot of their names even. And really jumping back into, making sure that I'm in tune with my intuition makes me feel like I'm tapping into a well of, beautiful resources that my ancestors have, still hold, I believe, and, have held for themselves, throughout their lifetimes. And I feel like that my intuition is such an anchor for that. And that's why, that's why I really come out and I think, how can we use tarot or just witchcraft in general, to really create a more ideal future? Because I'm really tuned into my sadness over, my lineage, and the erasure that is around there. But yeah, that's why I do things like tarot for social justice and etc. Because, I feel like I have a responsibility to use my gifts in order to make, make this world something that my ancestors could have never dreamed of. And that's really what really is one of the big things that keeps me going.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I think, witchcraft in so many ways and so many different cultures has been used as a tool for oppressing people as well.
Right, right.
And so it's so important to acknowledge that as a witch, just to take part in that lineage in a way.
Right. Yeah, totally. I've been, it's interesting, right? Because we have all of these like methods for honing and developing our intuition. And I've been recently, in terms of like talking about my ancestors and stuff, I have been taking on traditions that I know were popular in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, etc., for my enslaved ancestors. And I feel like I'm honing my intuition by things like picking up, the banjo. I'm learning how to play the banjo because, every time I strum, I, hear or I feel one of their voices, resonate within me. I cook, traditional recipes. And I just really want people to know that there are more ways than one to really connect to your intuition and to your lineage. And sometimes that takes a lot of exploration, regardless of whether your history is documented or not. And there's a lot of, and that does can bring up a lot of feelings. But I think it's really worthwhile to explore your own lineage and understand that connection, because I think there's something in that for a lot of people that can really help them trust in the intuition that so many generations of the people who came before them really relied upon and trusted. And yeah, I just think it's beautiful that we can connect to that. And so yeah, that really guides a lot of my work.
I love that. It's such an important affirmation about the magic in what might feel more mundane, because I think, I don't know, like white wellness culture has like taught us that like you have to drink green juice and meditate every day and like do certain things in order to like be spiritual or intuitive.
Yeah.
But that's capitalism.
Exactly.
Like, it's a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really appreciate you sharing that, because it's so important. And I'm wondering, and just on that thread, if you could speak a little bit to what magic means to you and what magic looks like in your life.
Yeah, I was thinking about this question earlier before talking to you, and I had all of these big, elaborate answers. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wing it and just say what I really feel like deep inside. At its simplest, I think magic is living intentionally. And that's what it means for me. I know that I think this world is magic. I think, everything we do is sort of like a spell, right? And I have to credit my friend Angela Mary Magic. I refer to this quote all the time, but everything is a spell, she says. And I really believe that. A lot of my work and the things that I teach about are grounded in the mundane world. I'm a very pentacles kind of witch. And so in thinking about like what is magic, for me, it means getting up and living my life intentionally, and that can't always be the case, right? Sometimes we do go on autopilot. Sometimes we are, we're busy, we've got life to do. If I had all the time in the world, my morning routine would probably be like 6 hours, but that's not going to happen ever. Or I mean, it could happen, I shouldn't say ever, but it's not going to happen today or tomorrow or next week probably. And so magic is what, and for me, I think magic is what the magic maker makes it. And that can be for better or for worse. But I think, the other day I was reading this book. It's called Hello Fears. And they were talking about how, sometimes it feels like life moves really fast. Like we look back and we're like, whoa, where did this year go? And I feel that way a lot. And she was talking, the author actually, the author is, I think their last name is Roller. I don't want to refer to something and not make it easy for someone to look it up. But yeah, she was talking about how childhood, things sometimes move. When we look back on it and think about childhood, we think, it went by a lot, slower than, maybe it does now. And she was explaining this concept around how, when we live in routines, our brain sort of like categorizes like the routines as like one event. Like, for example, when you think about brushing your teeth, this morning, you're probably not thinking specifically about actually like brushing your teeth this specific morning. You're probably just thinking about brushing your teeth in general. And so that's categorized as like one experience. But when you have integrate more unique experiences in your life or intentional experiences, you can kind of slow time down, and time, what is time? And so, but regardless of whatever it is, you can really create more texture and depth to your life when you live it intentionally. And, and I think about my life and I'm like, whoa, time's going by really fast. Why is it going by so fast? Let's slow down. What meaning does my life have for me today? What am I thinking of in this moment? How is this moment different from the moment before, or from the day before? Magic gives me the knowledge that I can practice magic, offers me this, confidence that I can really go out into the world and come back to myself and know that, I lived an intentional life today. And obviously that's when, circumstances allow. Sometimes you just got to go on autopilot for, some things, but magic has really helped me slow down my life and really create intentional experiences that mean something to me. And I'm not talking about big stuff. I'm talking about like, today I drank my water bottle twice, and that's a spell. And I'm really proud of myself for doing it. It's the first day that I've done that for a while. And that experience is significant to me. Compared to how many times I just drink water any time of day. So yeah, it's about living a life of significance and empowerment, really.
That's such a lovely way to frame it, and I appreciate you just going from your heart, because it is such a big question to ask someone, like, what is magic?
Yeah,
so many things, but
right.
I really appreciate that, because maybe I'm just like having one of those days where I'm like, capitalism destroys everything. But
me too.
Like you're saying, like you get to slow down time and have a meaningful experience. Right. Like that is so magical and true. And it's very anti-capitalist.
Right. The world doesn't want us to slow down, go, go, go is the mantra. And I am actively resisting that as much as I can, and, we are all complicit in it, right? Because we have to participate in this, awful structure, awful and oppressive structures rather. But magic feels like, you know, a reclamation of your own power, and, you know, knowing that your life is your own and that the choices you make can be embodied, and knowing that, you know, not all of your choices are going to be, I believe this with my whole heart, you know, my whole being, but you, there's something profound about doing something and doing it because you feel like that is the right choice to make, versus this is the choice that, you know, the system wants me to make, and therefore it's the right system because that's probably or the right choice because, you know, that path is going to be probably easier, you know, easier to go through, and because a lot of my magic feels like going against the grain, and that sort of yeah, I just think magic is, you know, can be anti-capitalist, and I, you know, really try to stream that thread into a lot of the things that I try to teach about.
Yeah, it's so potent and so felt when I was at your workshop, Tarot for Social Justice. It was just like such a beautiful affirmation of that and more.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you were there.
Yeah, me too. I loved it. I'm curious because I loved that resource you just shared. What are some things that are most inspiring your magic these days?
Um, these days, I think going outside is really inspiring my magic. Just walking down my driveway and looking at the roses blooming. I feel so awful for saying that because I know in so many other places right now when we're recording, it's very snowy. But integrating more of, you know, the outdoors into my magical practice, I find lots of inspiration, even just in a blade of grass. Spending time with a blade of grass has really given me a lot of inspiration. But also being with a big giant tree offers me, you know, that as well. Also, gratitude has really been informing my practice. I really enjoy, I think gratitude is a huge spell in my life. And I really enjoy reflecting on how people have, you know, supported me and, you know, have opened roads for me or have even just said something nice to me that day. And I think of that and I process that like, oh, I received all of these things from the world externally. How can I contribute back to that world? And that's also super inspiring for me because I do magic, because I'm a witch, I believe that change is possible. And because I believe change is possible, that gives me a reason to act. That gives me a reason to use my intuition, my will, my action, my desires, all of that to really inform the way that I interact externally. And doing that work, that internal intuition work, really, I think, and doing that internal intuition work supports your ability to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, you realize that you have more to offer to yourself and to the world. And that sort of thinking really inspires me because quite often I wake up, I'm like, I don't want to do my morning practice. I want to sleep. I don't want to stretch my body. I want to sit in my work chair and just get it over with so I can chill tonight. But I know the power of returning to my magic every day. And things like knowing that I can, you know, change somebody's life or even, you know, I can impact this world in whatever positive way I can. That's really motivation for me to just, you know, keep at it and to really remember that my magic is meaningful and that it ripples far beyond myself and far beyond what I could ever perceive.
So important.
Yeah.
And
sure.
so your practice, would you mind sharing a little bit about like your daily rituals or the practices that help you with that? It sounded like journaling was a part of it.
Yeah, I'm a big journaler. Actually, I have journaled almost every day since I was 4. So I am quite, I don't want to say obsessive over it, but it's a big part of my practice, because otherwise I feel like I'm just keeping all of this information in my head, these feelings in my head. And so there's quite a release I feel with journaling. But yeah, usually I get up, I do some yoga or some stretches. I try to, go out and take a walk. A lot of times it's just walking, around the block and, petting whatever cats I find. Um, and then I love to come home, and if I'm feeling the urge, or the desire, excuse me, I pull a tarot card, or an oracle card of the day. I've been pulling a lot of the cards from the Word Sisters Oracle deck that you created. Oh, so amazing, so amazing. So I pull a card and I write about it for the day. And I used to write about it like, this is what this card means, and this is what, I think it should, this should be my mantra for the day. And honestly, it's like, okay, here's something to think about. Reflect on how it really resonates with you. And, more than it being like a directive, it's more of like, how does this archetype compare or contrast to how I'm feeling right now, and what information does that have to teach me? Then I do, I have an offering to my ancestors and, my benevolent spirit guides. And yeah, and then one thing that I'm trying to do now is not make my practice so rigid. And so now, after I go through those steps, it's more go with the flow. So I'll, write a poem or meditate, or light some incense, or dance. Dancing has really felt like a big part of my spiritual practice lately. I'm not super good at it, but it makes me happy and confident, and reminds me that I am embodied. And yeah. And I pray to, my ancestors, and try to keep that line of communication open. And I try to, whenever I can, it's usually not in the morning, but I do like some sort of offering. Oftentimes I'll light a candle for a friend, or like some person I don't know on Instagram who seems to be really going through it. Like, I'll do a little prayer and candle for them. And yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much it. But I'm trying to become a little more flexible and go with the flow these days.
That's awesome. I feel like it's a good kind of choose your own adventure
Yeah,
framework.
definitely. Yeah, otherwise I get turned off by the rigidity, and I'm like, oh, I did, I meditated or I stretched, but I didn't pull a tarot card. And I, create some sort of narrative in my head that, I have ruined my day because of it. But, flow is the nature of the universe, no matter what, no matter what the system tries to tell us. And so I'm really trying to really feel that in a very embodied way.
Amazing. Yeah, I think a lot of folks who are maybe starting off on their spiritual path can get kind of stuck in feeling like they need to figure out the one pathway or the type of meditation. And as you said, flow is the way.
Right. And I think a lot of people like to look at other people's routines, and they're like, well, that person seems like this magical witch. If I do this morning routine, it'll work for me. And I will also become just like them, or, my own version of whatever I perceive to be good within that person. And honestly, there's no real formula. And, no matter what someone tries to tell you or sell you, only you know what fills your cup every day or every week, or whenever you decide to tap into yourself and, the universe. There's no magic, isn't prescriptive. It's not, again, we are part of the magical equation. So any sort of push to really streamline and sort of, I don't know, codify what makes, a morning practice legit is, total BS.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious, since we're talking about this, is there any advice you might give to someone on a spiritual path or someone who's hoping to connect more deeply with their intuition?
Yeah, the number one thing I tell to baby witches, oh, I love baby witches.
Yeah.
I love them so much. The number one thing I tell them is to meditate. And that's like not the sexiest thing to tell somebody who's like really into magic, but meditation really is at the core of a lot of our magic and spell work. And it's not just because, oh, it calms us down. It really helps us, focus our energy, and really tap into ourselves. And honestly, we use meditation in so many ways. Sometimes it turns into rumination. But when we meditate, that's, when we will ourselves to meditate, we will ourselves to be in the present moment. And a lot of our practice, I think, as witches, involves an awareness of the present moment, and what you are doing in that moment. And I think meditation just really helps us to be aware of that and to focus our energy, because as witches, we, focus our energy, our will, and our desire, and, we take action toward it. But if you can't focus, it's going to be really hard to take, to know how to trust yourself when it's ready to take an action, or to trust yourself to even know what action, your inner self wants to take. So meditation is like my number one thing. And yeah, it sounds really boring, but the more consistently I meditate, the easier it is, I think, to do spell work and magic work, and quite easily, actually, I think it just makes magic easier to really know how to like chill out, tune in, and, simplify what's going on up there.
Yeah, that's so real. Such
sure.
good advice. I feel like I love asking that question, just because then like my inner baby witch gets to absorb it and like take it in. And I really love that. And I'm just thinking back to like being like a baby witch, but also a confused Buddhist, and like doing so much meditation, and how that has really affected a lot of things,
Really?
energetic for me. So
Nice. I'm glad for you.
yeah, I would say too, like meditation is a lot of different things.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Meditation is definitely not always sitting butterfly style, on this beautiful mat and, doing what it looks like in movies or whatever. Meditation can be a lot of things. Do you have any, I'm just curious, do you have any sort of meditations that are unconventional?
I currently do a lot of walking meditation. So it's
Ooh,
not
yeah.
terribly unconventional, but it's definitely not what people think of when they think of meditation. So, I think what you were saying about like getting really present, when you're walking, like, in a space or outside in the world, you just become more present to environment and feeling and sensation.
Yes.
And your body too, when
That's
I'm
so
moving.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for asking. So I wanted to circle back to something you said at the beginning, which excited me, about hope.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, what is your biggest hope for? I don't know what I want to say. It's a big question, but like your biggest hope for the world, for witches, for magic,
Yeah.
anything.
My biggest wish, my biggest hope for the world has to be like destroying, supremacist culture and structures. But I love this question that you asked, what's your biggest hope for witches? And no one's ever asked me that before. So I'm like, ooh, excited about it. But it also, I think my biggest hope for witches is that we can more, um, more honestly trust our inner voices, because I think as witchcraft becomes more and more popular, it sounds more and more like an other regulated thing rather than like self-regulated. And I really I think that I see things, for example, on Instagram, like this is the right way to do things and this is the wrong way to do things, um, and that's not something you can prescribe to everyone. And so my biggest hope for witches, at least right now, as I'm sitting here with you, is a collective re re there's so many words I could say here, and I can't pick just one, but maybe rejoining our intuition every day and understanding that, no witch is better than any other witch. We're all just trying to make it out here, and the best, we're just trying to live the best we can. And the more that we consider ourselves as a community, I think the stronger our collective magic can be. And so yeah, I'm over like witch cops and like people who are like so a lot of my practice is like, well, what feels right for you? And that seems frustrating for some people, because it's like, no, like just tell me what to do, because we think of that like of when we're being taught something, we think this information is coming from outside within, and then people like us tend to be like, well, what's inside? And it's like, I don't know. And so my role as a witch supporter is to really help people make that journey, but not to give them the answers, because I don't have the answers. Only you can have the answer for yourself, and you'll know what that is. Yeah.
That's beautiful advice.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think more of that,
Right.
more of spaciousness and less being told what's right and wrong,
Spaciousness. Yes, that is one big word I'm carrying with myself this whole year. My last year was so much of a tornado. And I think it was because I was like trying to, so one thing about my chart is, which I very much resonate with, is I have a lot of fixed placements. And so I am always trying to be more and more flexible, because I tend to be very methodical and rigid. And just the way that like 2020 and 2021 happened, and what is currently happening now, introduces such a level of like unpredictability and instability that has kind of really rocked my ability to be consistently within my rigid structures and etc. And so now I'm really trying to carry this like energy of spaciousness and like make decisions from a place that feels spacious, rather than forced or restrictive.
I'm right there with you. All the fixed energy. So
yeah,
it's
you
been,
get it.
Yeah. Spells for space.
Yes.
Well, I'm so glad we could have this conversation, and I'm excited to see how it evolves for all of us listening, and for myself too. So much to think about.
Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I just am so thankful that you invited me on here. And yeah, I am so excited to, continue working with, modern witches and, supporting the work that you do. And yeah, I thank you.
Thank you so much. I can't wait for that too. I'm hoping you can share, you did share your website, and we'll put that in the show notes, but anything else you have coming up that you want to let folks know about, anything you're leading or?
Yeah, in the spirit of spaciousness, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
In the spirit of spaciousness, I am really slowing down this year. So I don't have much to promote. I am reintroducing my podcast, Which Should I Do? It's just an advice podcast for witches. I released a pilot last year, and so that was pretty well received. So we're going to go back and do a full season. So that'll be coming up in February or
Awesome.
March. So sometime in the late winter, early spring. And other than that, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Tiny Parsnip. And yeah, if you are interested in anything that I do, I really encourage people to reach out to me because I do talk back. So yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Amazing. Good for you. That's like really, I, as someone who has also been through tornado and too muchness, it's really hard to not fill your plate back up. So
exactly. I'm resisting the urge to. Thank you.
Yeah, it's hard. All right. Well, thank you so much, Maria. And we'll let folks know how to find you.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Okay, I'm going to pause the recording.